revenues method, you can see the relief from royalty method is in both the income and the market approach. So basically what happens there is because we own certain assets, okay, and I'm thinking specifically about technology, all right, so software, if you will, and then trade names, trademarks. Those are typically the assets where you might use a relief from royalty method. Because of the fact that we own them, we don't have to pay royalties for their use, okay? So it's a relief from paying royalty, all right? So if, by way of example, trademarks and trade names might have a 2 or 3 or 5% royalty associated with them, the fact that I've got that savings, I can present value that savings back and come up with a value indication, okay? Now, where do I get that 2 or 3 or 5% royalty rate? I go out to the marketplace and I'll look at other transactions and royalty agreements that are in the marketplace. So that's why it's in both the market and the income approach. Technically, we're discounting it back under that income approach, but we're getting our royalty rates from market data. So it's sort of hitting both sides. All right, we're about finished here. How to make the process easier. So you finally completed your transaction. Everybody in here been through a transaction? Most, generally, I'm seeing a whole lot of heads, yeah. So it sucks, right? I mean, it's terrible. I mean, let's call it what it is. It is a pain in the butt. You got Brad calling you due diligence information all the time. You've got the auditors trying to weigh in on how to structure it, your tax guys, and it's just, everybody hates it, okay? You get deal fatigue by the end of it, it's a mess. And then all of a sudden, you finally get this thing done, you think maybe you got a transaction bonus coming to you, you're all fired up, and then your auditor calls in, they're like, hey, you got to do this purchase price allocation. Oh, you're kidding me, why? What the heck is a purchase, what's 805, I don't even know what this stuff means. There's a process to make this easier, I promise you. Get valuation specialists involved during the diligence phase of the engagement, okay, or of the acquisition, I should say. So doing that makes this way easier. Make the valuation part of this process, and what I mean by that is this. So, we've got, and Brad's going to talk later, I sort of put him on the spot, so I'll walk in. We've got a transaction advisory services group, okay, a diligence group, if you will. Those guys have every bit of information that they could ever ask for, and they have to have it to do diligence on the particular target. So there's some sort of a data room out there usually that they've got access to, and the seller is, anything you want, man. I've got $50 million riding on this thing. You take it all. You want my social security number? I'll give it to you. I don't care. So they're giving you every bit of information that you ask for, and you've got the ability to gain access to it, okay? So if we're working with our diligence team, they're going, hey, you guys are signed up for the purchase price allocation on the back of this thing. You get in here too. Here's access to the file room. You start pulling off the documents that you need so that you can go ahead and build your file out. Maybe we aren't doing the diligence and I'm doing the valuation on the back end anyway. I get with management early and I say, hey, while that diligence room is still available, start funneling me all this information, okay? You can see the purchase agreement later once it gets signed, but by way of example, in that second bullet, leverage the seller's willingness to provide the information on their dime while they're still interested. Anybody that's been through a transaction knows that day 2 after the transaction, you can't find that seller anywhere. They are so far out there. They're in Europe. They're on a boat somewhere. They're in Florida. If you don't get that information, that next to last bullet, customer relationships, it is near impossible to find customer data, period, okay? Much less a year after or 6 months after the transaction closes, especially if the CEO or CFO has been highly involved and is no longer involved and they're the only ones that know where this data is kept. It's very, very difficult to get us what we need after the transaction. So make us, and as you can see on that last bullet, we're going to ask for everything, okay? We're no different than the audit group, we're no different than the TAS group, we're gonna ask for everything just like they are. So making us a part of that process, and a lot of our clients do just that. They will literally close on a Tuesday, and on Wednesday, we get the email that says, hey, Andy, here's the funds flow, here's the purchase agreement, here are the disclosure schedules, those are important, not just the purchase agreement. You know, they probably don't have an open balance sheet, obviously, by that point, but you know, here are a number of the different items, the diligence deck. Maybe it's, maybe there's some sort of a cyber diligence deck as well. They'll send that to, you know, all the different things that you can imagine we might need, and they'll send that to us while the data room's open. Then we'll have those follow-up conversations a little bit later. After we get into data, we'll be able to dig a little bit deeper, ask some follow-up questions. So I told you that on this slide, on the easy button slide, I was going to make a couple of other comments. So contingent consideration is one of the ones I was going to come back to. In order to make this process easier, if you guys have the ability to weigh in on contingent consideration, I'm not assuming that everybody does, but sometimes you will. In the event that you do, it's good to have an understanding of contingent consideration and the complexities of it. And what I mean by that is this. It's very easy for the folks negotiating the deal. They might be sitting in New York, they might be sitting, you know, wherever. They're negotiating the deal, and they've got one last hurdle to get over, and they say, hey, tell you what, we'll give you an extra $1 million if you do X, Y, and Z. Okay, sounds good. And that's literally the amount of thought that goes into it, okay? I mean, it truly is. There is this much thought that goes into it. You want an extra $1 million, fine. You do this, I'll give you an extra $1 million. Then it comes to us. Everybody in this room then has to deal with that second and a half conversation, okay? And it is a dumpster fire, all right? I had to value one of these things not too long ago. It was basically a group. They said, okay, tell you what, this particular chunk of the company is a little risky for us, okay? We're going to give you your $20 million of cash in your Maserati or whatever the heck it was, rollover equity and everything. But this one, you know, the seller wanted to say $25 million, and they weren't, you know, willing to pay it. So they said, tell you what, if this segment of the company can do the following amount of revenue and generate the following amount of EBITDA, we'll give you an extra $5 million. And we're going to check it every single month. And if for a period of 3 months you can hit these targets 3 months in a row, then we'll pay you this $5 million. Again, it was like a 5-second conversation, and everybody agreed to it. When it got to my desk, though, I realized they don't track revenue in that segment. They don't track EBITDA in that segment. They also don't report monthly in that segment or anywhere else in the company for that. So, and I say they couldn't track revenue. They could figure out how to do it, but it just, I spent more time trying to gather information, because think about it, as Christian mentioned, he didn't mention this specifically, you value a lot of these contingent consideration items using the option pricing model, okay? So just like Christian was working through that option pricing methodology, you do the same thing on this contingent consideration. So what's a big piece of that? The volatility, right? We talked about that. So volatility is a huge piece. How do you come up with the volatility of something that's never even been tracked? You know, I mean, everything got messed up and down, okay? So understanding what you're agreeing to, despite the fact that you can get the deal done, and, you know, yeah, just give me an extra $1 million and you can, you know, if you do this, we'll take care of it. So just understand the complications of it, I think, is what I'm getting at there. Also, one other thing, and I'm saying this because you guys are dealing with your auditors, if you've got multiple, if you're a very acquisitive company, okay, if you've got a one-off deal here or one-off deal there, this may not be as applicable. I'm sort of looking at the auditors, they might say, no, it's applicable. But you know, if you're doing 10 deals a year, for instance, and they're looking at all 10, I guarantee you what they're going to do is this. They're going to, some 22-year-old kid's going to have a spreadsheet 10 miles long, okay, and they're going to line all 10 of them up side by side. They're going to say, okay, trademarks. Company 1 did 2% royalty rate, company 2 did 3%, then 5%, then 1%, then 2%. Stop, we're 5 seconds into this. and they've got 2, 1, 5, 3. This is totally inconsistent, okay? I want to see, as an auditor, I've never been an auditor, I'm assuming they would want to see this, trade names and trademarks are always going to be 2, maybe 3%. There's a reason for it, okay? So 22233, 2222233. All right? That's what they're seeing on those royalty rates that I was talking about a minute ago. Because they're going to look at it and say, man, they're buying a lot of the same companies. These are all very similar. It would make sense that you would have the same royalty rate, okay? There's a consistency there. Maybe it's, you know, life of the software that you've purchased. Maybe it's, you know, something to do with the non-competition agreements, you know, the likelihood of competition and what that might look. The auditors love consistency, right? Anybody, auditors, yeah, I get some thumbs up in the back, yeah. So the more consistent you can be, it's good to have that conversation. From where I'm sitting, it's good to have that conversation with management, but as management, it's good to understand what the auditors want, okay? So I can tell you that early on, and this is back during the Wild West of purchase price allocation work, you know, we'd pick up the phone and we'd have a conversation with management, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I don't know, 2%, 75%, I don't care, just make it up, whatever you want, that's fine. And you could sort of get that through, you know, auditors, you know, seems reasonable, not material, keep moving, you know, that was fine. It's a much bigger deal, okay, nowadays. And so the more consistent, especially for highly acquisitive, the more consistent you can be with your assumptions, the easier this will be coming at the backside of the audit. So I think I hit everything. Matt, did I answer all of your questions from earlier?
I thought that was amazing, Andy.
Awesome. Good. Anybody else got any questions? 15 minutes of prep work. Awesome.
All right. We'll take a 5-minute quick break. Right now we're taking a, yeah. That's, yeah. We'll take a 5-minute and then start right back with Jim at 2.
Andy's on East Carolina,
Since y'all answer next, I want to get him to make sure the viewpoint is about Andy Lowe. We're not negative. The others in this room.
Yeah, you need to make sure and make that comment.
Hey, Miss Danny, you're standing there around me.
That's right.
I get past this thing.